Sonia was a young woman who lived in a small neighborhood in Lagos, a big city by the ocean. Ever since she was born, Sonia could not see the world with her eyes. To her, the world was full of sounds, smells and touches instead of colors and shapes. Every morning, she woke up in her family's little house to the crowing of roosters and the distant honk of cars on the busy streets. She smelled the rich, warm aroma of her mother's cooking, spicy beans and fried plantain for breakfast, and heard her father humming a cheerful tune in the next room. Sonia's world was dark, but it was also warm and safe. Her family loved her very much, and she depended on them for almost everything. Her mother would gently hold her hand to guide her to the table for breakfast. Her father would describe the bright sun and blue sky outside so she could picture it in her mind. Her younger brother Tunde would help tie her shoelaces and lead her carefully down the front steps of their home whenever they went out. Everyone in the neighborhood knew Sonia and cared about her. They saw a sweet girl who always wore a gentle smile, even though she lived in darkness. She had a soft voice that made people feel calm. When neighbors came by, she would greet them politely, saying, "Good morning," or "Good afternoon, sir," and she always remembered to say please and thank you. Children in the area often came to play near her home, and although Sonia couldn't see them, she laughed at their funny jokes and told her own little stories that made them giggle. To all who met her, Sonia was an innocent, kind soul who deserved love and care, and they gladly gave it. Sonia's life was ordinary and peaceful in many ways, but it was also filled with special care because of her blindness. Her mother, Adiola, was always by her side, helping her choose her clothes each day, often a simple dress in bright colors that Sonia couldn't see but loved to hear described. Her father, Kunle, worked hard as a teacher and made sure Sonia learned how to read in Braille, running her fingers over bumpy dots on paper to form words. In the evenings, the family would sit outside on the porch as the Lagos sun set, painting the sky orange, or so they told Sonia. They would listen to the distant sounds of the city, the call of street sellers hawking bread and fruits, the laughter of neighbors exchanging stories after a long day, and the faraway rush of traffic. Sonia would lean her head on her mother's shoulder, feeling the comforting fabric of her mother's Ankara dress, and she would smile, thinking how lucky she was to have such a loving family. She appeared so gentle and grateful. She was always quick to hug her parents and brother and say, "I love you," which made their hearts swell with happiness and protectiveness. Because she had never seen the world, they tried their best to be her eyes. They guided her every step so she would never get hurt. If she walked in the yard, her brother would warn her, "Step up now, there's a stone," or "Watch out, the ground is muddy." If she wanted to help in the kitchen, her mother would stand right behind her, making sure she didn't touch the hot pot or cut herself with a knife. Sonia seemed so vulnerable and helpless, like a little bird that had fallen out of its nest, and her family were the only ones who could help her fly safely. They never imagined that life could be any different, and they never expected anything to change with their sweet, blind daughter. One sunny afternoon, however, something in Sonia's behavior did change, and it quietly surprised everyone. It started with small things. That day, Sonia's mother was preparing lunch, a big pot of jollof rice that filled the air with a yummy tomato and spice scent. She asked Sonia's brother to fetch water from the public tap down the road, as they often did when the tap in the house wasn't running. Usually, Sonia would sit patiently on a stool in the kitchen or on the porch, waiting for someone to help her if she needed anything. But this time, Sonia stood up and said in her soft voice, "Mama, I can go get the water with Tunde." "I know the way." Her mother looked up in surprise, spoon in hand. "Are you sure, my dear?" Mama asked gently, worried that the road might be too busy or that Sonia might trip. Sonia nodded and gave a reassuring smile. "I am sure, Mama. I can do it," she insisted. Her brother Tunde was also puzzled. He had never seen Sonia volunteer to do a chore outside on her own. Usually he held her hand tightly whenever they went out, especially since the streets in Lagos could be chaotic with rushing cars, motorbikes zipping by and people everywhere. Okay, if you're sure, Tunda said, a little unsure himself. He walked with Sonia out of the compound, expecting her to hold onto his arm as usual. Strangely, Sonia walked just a step ahead of him, her hand barely touching his elbow. She moved with a confidence that made Tunda tilt his head in curiosity. How did she know where to step so surely? They passed the familiar old mango tree by the gate, and Sonia said quietly, "Careful, the root," just as Tunde was about to warn her of the bump in the path. He was startled that she already knew it was there. As the two siblings made their way down the dusty road, neighbours waved and greeted them. "Sonia? Tunde? Where are you going?" called Mr. Okoye from next door in his friendly voice. "To get water," Tunde replied. Sonia smiled and waved in the direction of Mr. Okoye's voice. She navigated around a puddle left from last night's rain without Tunde telling her. In fact, Tunde noticed that Sonia was stepping around things just before he could speak to warn her, as if she knew they were there somehow. After filling the bucket at the tap, which gushed cold, clear water, Sonia even picked it up by the handle along with Tunde, helping him carry it. She had never done that before. By the time they returned home, Tunde was bursting to tell his parents what he saw. "Mama, Papa, you won't believe it," he exclaimed, setting down the heavy bucket. "Sonia walked by herself most of the way. She even helped carry the water." Their mother was wiping her hands on a cloth as she came out to see, and their father had just returned from the school where he taught. Both looked at Sonia with pride but also confusion. "Is that true?" Papa asked, patting Sonia on the shoulder. Sonia stood there with a shy smile. A tiny bead of sweat rolled down her forehead from the walk in the sun. "Yes, Papa, I want to be more helpful," she said simply. Her mother gave her a big hug, happy but also a bit unsure of how Sonia managed so well. That night, as the family ate dinner, they praised Sonia for being brave. She felt around her plate for her spoon and ate quietly, listening to their kind words. But once or twice her mother noticed Sonia tilt her head as if she was glancing at them. Of course, Mama thought it must be her imagination because Sonia couldn't see. Still, a strange feeling tickled at the back of Mama's mind that something was different. Papa, too, kept stealing glances at Sonia during the meal, noticing how calm and confident she seemed. It was a subtle change, but it was there. Sonia's innocent grin in the soft yellow light of the oil lamp looked just a little bit mysterious that night. Her family members felt a mix of emotions. They were happy to see her becoming independent, but they were also confused and a little worried. They asked themselves, how did Sonia manage so easily in the bustling streets today? Was it just luck? Or had she been practicing somehow? Each of them went to bed with that question quietly in their hearts, unable to shake off the feeling that something about Sonia was not quite as it seemed. The next few days in the household were uneasy. Ever since the walk to get water, Mama and Papa watched Sonia more closely, and they noticed more strange things. For example, one morning Sonia was walking from her bedroom to the living room. Papa quietly moved a footstool into her usual path as a little test. Normally, if Sonia didn't know something was in front of her, she would trip over it. But this time, she came down the hallway and right before her foot touched the stool, she paused. She reached out with her hand, patted the top of the footstool, and gently stepped around it. Papa's eyes widened in surprise. He had been standing silently, not saying a word, yet somehow Sonia knew the stool was there. Sonia just smiled in that innocent way and continued to the living room, humming softly as if nothing strange had happened. Papa felt his heart beat faster. Something was definitely odd. He shared a worried glance with Mama, but they decided to keep calm and observe a bit more before saying anything. Later that day, Mama suggested that Sonia help slice some plantains in the kitchen. Mama handed Sonia a knife carefully. Usually, Mama would hold Sonia's hand to guide the cut, because they were afraid she might hurt herself. This time, Mama quietly stepped back and let Sonia try on her own. To her surprise, Sonia handled the knife easily and sliced the plantains smoothly, each piece almost the same size. She did it as if she had done it many times before all by herself. When she finished, Sonia turned her face toward Mama and said with a sweet voice, "Is that good, Mama?" Mama nodded slowly, feeling confused. How could Sonia cut so evenly without seeing? That evening, once Sonia had gone to bed, Mama, Papa, and Tunde sat together in the living room with the lights dim. They spoke in hushed voices, so Sonia wouldn't hear them through the walls. "I think something is wrong," Papa whispered. "Our daughter knows things a blind girl shouldn't. It's like she can see the stool, the puddles, the knife. Have you noticed?" Mama wiped a tear from her eye because she felt guilty for even doubting her beloved child. "Today, I saw her threading a needle by herself," Mama confessed softly. She had peeked into Sonia's room in the afternoon and found Sonia holding a needle and thread, trying to fix a loose button on her dress. Sonia had licked the end of the thread and was pushing it straight through the tiny hole of the needle easily. Mama gasped and backed away before Sonia knew she was watching. Tunde shook his head, remembering how she warned him about the mango tree root, and walked so confidently. Could she be able to see, at least a little? Tunde asked, hardly believing the words. They all fell silent, the idea hanging heavy in the room. It was so hard to imagine that Sonia, their sweet blind Sonia, might have been hiding something. But the clues were there now, like pieces of a puzzle coming together. Papa decided they couldn't ignore it anymore. "We have to talk to her," he said firmly. The next morning they gently called Sonia into the parlour after breakfast. Sonia sensed the serious tone in their voices. She sat down on the old sofa, and her family gathered around her. Her mother spoke first, voice trembling. "Sonia, darling, is there anything you want to tell us?" Sonia's fingers fiddled with the folded cane she sometimes used. There was a long silence. Papa then said in a careful tone, We are worried that you haven't been completely honest with us, my dear. We want you to be safe, but we also want the truth." At those words, Sonia's sweet expression faltered for just a second. Her lips pressed together, and she tilted her head. "What do you mean, Papa?" she asked quietly. But her voice had changed just a little. It was less innocent and more guarded. Tunde blurted out, "Can you see?" "Sonia, can you see even a little bit?" His voice almost cracked because he felt guilty for asking, but also scared of the answer. Sonia fell silent again. She gripped her cane tightly. Finally, she let out a small sigh, and for the first time, her face did not look so gentle. In a calm, low voice that felt like a stranger's, she answered, "Yes, I can see a little bit." The room seemed to freeze. Mama covered her mouth with her hand, eyes filling with tears. Papa's face went pale and he stood up from his chair. Tunde just stared, not wanting to believe what he heard. Sonia continued, her voice growing bolder and colder. "I can see more than you think. And I have, for a long time." As she spoke these words, she sat up straighter and held her head high, no longer playing the shy, helpless girl. There was a small, strange smile on her face, a smile that sent a chill through her family. It was in that moment that Sonia dropped the mask of total innocence she had worn all her life. Her true self was coming through, and it was not the soft-hearted, helpless daughter they thought they knew. Sonia began to explain, and as she spoke, memories from the past came alive in everyone's mind like scenes from a play. Her voice was steady and matter-of-fact, not at all shy or sorry. "I learned how to do many things on my own a long time ago," she said quietly, "but I found it easier to let you all take care of me." Her words were simple, but they felt like sharp knives to her family's hearts. Mama's eyes were overflowing with tears now. She remembered how little Sonia would sometimes do something surprising, like finding her favourite doll on her own, even though they thought she couldn't see it on the shelf. In those moments, Sonia had just giggled and said she felt around. But now Mama realised that Sonia had probably seen the doll's shape or colour and just pretended to stumble upon it. Papa's hands trembled as he listened. He thought back to a day a few years ago. He had considered sending Sonia to a special school for blind children in another city where she could learn to be more independent. When he and Mama gently suggested it, Sonia had cried and begged not to be sent away. She clung to Papa's arms, saying, "Don't send me, I'm scared, I can't manage without you." Papa and Mama had quickly changed their minds, not wanting to cause their daughter any fear or pain. Now that memory stung. Papa realized that Sonia might not have been truly afraid at all. She simply didn't want to leave home where she was the center of everyone's world. Tunde felt his cheeks grow wet with tears as he recalled an afternoon when he wanted to play football with his friends. He had been putting on his shoes when Sonia suddenly called out from her room, pretending to sound afraid. She said she had heard a strange noise and was scared to be alone. Tunde, being a good brother, took off his shoes and spent the afternoon comforting Sonia instead, missing the game. Now he understood that she likely made up the noise just to keep him by her side. All these memories fit together like pieces of a puzzle, revealing the picture of what Sonia had done. Sonia had carefully controlled and guided her family with her actions and words. She learned exactly how to make them worry about her or feel sorry for her whenever she wanted something. If she wanted a new dress, she would act extra sad about not seeing others' pretty clothes, until Mama would hug her and say, "Don't worry, we will get you a beautiful dress you can feel." If she didn't feel like walking, she would pretend to stumble more than usual, and Papa would quickly decide to carry her on his back for a while. Each time, Sonia would hide her small secret smile, pleased that her plan was working. She had been doing this for years, and no one ever suspected because they trusted her completely. Now that trust was shattered. As Sonia calmly recounted these things, Mama began to sob softly into her hands. Her heart was broken, not just because Sonia could see and hadn't told them, but because Sonia had used their love as a tool. Papa looked down at the floor, his face full of pain and disbelief. He had always taught his students at school about honesty and trust, and here in his own home his daughter had been living a lie. Tunde couldn't bear it. He stood up, voice trembling with hurt and anger. "How could you, Sonia? We loved you so much, and we would have loved you even if you could see. Why did you trick us?" Sonia turned her face toward her brother. In that moment, even though her eyes had always appeared a bit distant before, they now looked focused and clear. She gave a little shrug. "Because you all made it so easy," she replied in a quiet, cold tone. "You did everything I wanted when you thought I couldn't do anything myself." It was a cruel thing to say, but it was the truth of her feelings. Her family felt like the ground had fallen away beneath them. They felt shock, betrayal, and heartbreak all at once. Mama could hardly look at Sonia now, her lovely daughter who turned out to be living a secret life right before their eyes. Papa's voice was sad and stern as he said, "We trusted you, Sonia. We would have given you the world, but now we don't even know who you are." Sonia didn't answer him. She just sat there, her hands in her lap, no tears in her eyes, and an unreadable expression on her face. The room was filled with heavy silence and the sound of Mama's soft crying. The truth was out at last, like a dark cloud that had been hiding behind the sunshine of their family life, and it cast a shadow over everyone's heart. The hours after Sonia's confession passed in a painful blur for the family. After the truth came out, Sonia quietly excused herself and went to her small bedroom, leaving her parents and brother in stunned silence. Mama cried on Papa's shoulder for a long time that evening. Papa had no words to comfort her. His face was full of hurt and disappointment. Tunde sat in the corner, his arms folded tight across his chest, trying to stop his own tears. He kept asking, "Why would she do this? How could she lie to us for so long?" But no one had an answer. That night, dinner was silent and tense. The delicious food Mama made stayed mostly untouched. Sonia ate a few bites and then said she wasn't hungry. No one in the family felt like talking. The usual warmth in their home had been replaced by cold uncertainty. When it was time for bed, Mama knocked softly on Sonia's door. Inside, the room was dark. Sonia was sitting on her bed, her hands clasped together. She wasn't sleeping, and Mama could tell by her breathing that she was awake. Mama's voice was gentle but broken as she said, "Good night, my dear." Sonia replied quietly from the darkness, "Good night, Mama." But her tone was strange, distant, almost emotionless. Mama wanted to say, "I love you," out of habit, but the words caught in her throat. She just couldn't say it at that moment. She closed the door and went to her own room, fresh tears rolling down her cheeks. Late that night, none of them could sleep peacefully. Mama lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, remembering how she used to sing lullabies to little Sonia every night, and wondering if any of those tender moments had been real for Sonia, or just part of a big pretend game. Papa sat at the table with a cup of tea that had long gone cold, replaying every memory, looking for signs of Sonia's deception that he might have missed. He felt a heaviness in his chest, as if a great trust had been broken, and he blamed himself for being blind in a different way. Blind to the truth. Tunda tossed and turned in his bed, hugging the football he never got to play with that day she tricked him. He felt angry and sad all at once. He missed the sister he thought he had, the one who needed him and looked up to him. That person now felt like a character in a story that wasn't true. And Sonia? Sonia lay awake too, staring with open eyes into the darkness of her room. For the first time, she did not need to pretend to be blind when she was alone, yet she felt no joy or relief. She heard the quiet sounds of her mother crying down the hall and the faint creaking of the floor as Papa paced in the living room. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying not to listen. Inside her heart, there was a tiny ache, a feeling she wasn't used to. Guilt, but she also felt afraid. What would happen to her now that everyone knew her secret? In the still night, with the familiar hum of a neighbour's generator outside and distant honks from the city that never truly sleeps, the whole family felt lost. They were together under one roof, but the trust and comfort that held them together had cracked like a broken clay pot. Nothing would be the same in the morning. Morning arrived slowly, the sky turning pale grey over Lagos as the sun prepared to rise. The air was cool and quiet, with only the sound of a distant rooster and the far-off rumble of early buses starting their routes. Sonia had already made up her mind during the sleepless night. She decided to leave home at least for a while. She thought that perhaps her family would be happier without her there to remind them of the hurt. Or perhaps she just couldn't face them and their sad, worried eyes anymore. Just before dawn, Sonia got out of bed and felt her way to the small closet in the corner. Even though she could see a bit, her room was dim, and she moved mostly by memory. She pulled out a few of her belongings, a change of clothes, a water bottle, and the tiny carved wooden dog her father had given her on her 10th birthday, back when they believed she could only feel its shape, not see its cute little face. She placed these items into a worn backpack. Leaning against the wall by the door was her white folding cane. The cane she used whenever she went outside so people would know she was blind. Sonia picked it up and held it for a moment. This cane had been her companion and, in some ways, her tool for deception. Her fingers tightened around its handle. Then, with a deep breath, she set the cane back down on the table. She decided not to take it. If she was leaving, she would walk on her own with her own two eyes open. With the house still dark and silent, Sonia slung the backpack over her shoulder and quietly opened her bedroom door. Her heart was thumping hard in her chest as she tiptoed down the hall. She passed Tunda's room and heard him snoring softly. She paused outside her parents' door, hearing no sound from inside. For a moment, her resolve wavered. She felt the urge to burst in and say, "Sorry," to hug them, and promise to be honest from now on. Her hand hovered over the door, but she pulled it back. A single tear slipped down her cheek, but she wiped it away quickly. Sonia turned and continued on. She unlatched the front door as quietly as she could and stepped out into the cool morning. The sky was lighter now, and she could make out the shapes of the houses and trees on her street. For the first time, she truly walked alone. There was no mama or papa holding her hand, no Tunde by her side, and she wasn't pretending to need them. She walked past the familiar mango tree at the gate, hearing the leaves rustle in the morning breeze. As she stepped onto the empty street, a few early vendors were setting up their stalls down the road, and a neighbour's dog barked at the weak dawn light. Sonia felt a mix of fear and freedom swirling inside her. She did not know where she would go or what would happen to her, but she kept walking, one step at a time, down the road. Back inside the house, as the sun finally peeked over the horizon, Mama woke up and went to check on Sonia's room. The door was wide open and the bed was empty. Panic rose in her chest. "Kunle! Tunde!" she cried out, waking the household. They searched every room, but Sonia was gone. Mama's eyes fell on the white cane left behind on the table, and she sank into a chair, clutching it and sobbing. Papa rushed out the front door looking up and down the street, but he could only see a few early morning commuters and the glow of the sun reflecting on the windows of houses. Sonia was nowhere in sight. Tunde stood by his mother, tears in his eyes knowing his sister had chosen to leave. They didn't know if she would come back or where she would go. All three of them felt a hollowness inside, as if an important piece of their life was suddenly missing. As the city of Lagos began to bustle with morning activity, the little family could only sit in their quiet home and wonder. Sonia, meanwhile, walked on into the new day, her future uncertain. No one could say what would happen next, whether she would find her way and perhaps become a better person, or whether the path she chose would lead her to more loneliness. That question hung in the air like the fading night mist, without an answer. But one thing was certain. The story of Sonia had left everyone thinking deeply. Her family learned in the hardest way that things are not always what they seem, and that trust, once broken, is very hard to put back together. And Sonia herself stepped forward, feeling the weight of her choices, into a world that would no longer see her as the innocent blind girl, a world she would face on her own, for better or for worse. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.